Welcome back, everyone, to episode 64 of Fluent English with Podcast. I'm Sophie.
And I'm Alan. We hope you're all having a fantastic week.
Today we're tackling a topic that's fundamental to speaking English fluently: vocabulary.
Yep, that's right. Even if you've been listening to us for a while, building a strong vocabulary is always a good thing.
Exactly. The more words you know, the more confident you become when expressing yourself.
I think of it like this: it's like having a bigger toolbox for your English skills. The more tools you have, the more complex things you can communicate.
That's a great analogy, Alan. So, throughout this episode of Fluent English with Podcast, we'll be exploring different ways to beef up your vocabulary toolbox.
Sounds good? We'll also be joined by some special guests who'll share their own favorite techniques for learning new words.
Sounds like a fun episode. But first, let's revisit our key word for today. Vocabulary. It means the words you know and understand in a particular language. So, how do we actually expand this toolbox of words?
There are tons of ways, Sophie. Let's explore a few.
First up, reading. Reading exposes you to new words in context, which helps you understand their meaning and usage.
Exactly. It doesn't have to be textbooks all the time. You can read articles, blogs, even your favorite comics.
Another great way is to listen. Pay attention to podcasts like ours, audiobooks, or even movies and TV shows in English.
Yep, that's right. You can even try watching with subtitles in English to catch new words visually.
Absolutely. And don't forget about the power of flashcards. Write down new words you encounter, their definitions, and maybe even an example sentence.
That way you can review them later and solidify them in your memory.
There are also some fun apps and online games designed to help you learn vocabulary.
They can turn learning into a game, which can make it more engaging, especially for younger learners.
Exactly. The key is to find methods that work for you and make learning enjoyable.
So remember, everyone, vocabulary, it's all about consistent practice and finding ways to make it fun.
And joining us today is Emma, a language enthusiast who's mastered the art of picking up new vocabulary in her daily life. Emma, welcome.
Hi, Sophie. Hi, Alan. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you, Emma. So you mentioned learning vocabulary through daily life. Can you elaborate on that for our listeners?
Absolutely. It's everywhere around us. You just have to know where to look.
That's a great point, Emma.
For example, let's say you're grocery shopping. You see a new type of fruit you've never seen before. Instead of just passing by, look it up on your phone. Learn its name and maybe even a fun fact about it.
Grocery shopping. Interesting. So you're turning everyday tasks into mini vocabulary lessons.
Exactly. The same goes for watching the news. Pay attention to the vocabulary used by reporters. You might learn new words related to current events or politics.
That's a clever way to stay informed and expand your vocabulary at the same time.
Absolutely. And don't be afraid to ask questions. If you hear a new word during a conversation, simply ask for clarification. Most people are happy to help.
Ask questions. That's fantastic advice, Emma.
Thanks so much for sharing your tips, Emma. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure. And remember, the key is to be curious and embrace every opportunity to learn.
So we learned some great tips from Emma about incorporating vocabulary learning into daily life.
It definitely doesn't have to be a chore. Now, let's explore another powerful tool for building your vocabulary toolbox: synonyms and antonyms.
Synonyms, these are words that have similar meanings.
For example, happy and joyful are synonyms.
Exactly. Learning synonyms allows you to express yourself with more nuance and avoid repetition.
That's a fancy way of saying subtle difference.
Now, antonyms are on the opposite side of the spectrum.
These are words that have opposite meanings.
For example, happy and sad are antonyms.
Knowing antonyms helps you understand the full range of emotions and concepts in English.
Absolutely. There are many online resources and dictionaries that list synonyms and antonyms.
So, the next time you encounter a new word, try to find its synonyms and antonyms. This will help you solidify its meaning and usage in your mind.
That way, you're not just learning one word, but expanding your vocabulary knowledge.
Now we'll share some fun activities you can do to practice using synonyms and antonyms, and learning them can be a lot of fun. Here are some activities you can try.
First up, the synonym showdown. Choose a word you know and try to come up with as many synonyms as possible.
It can be a competition with a friend or just a personal challenge.
Another fun activity is the antonym alley. Take a sentence and try replacing a word with its antonym.
For example, the sentence "the day was sunny" becomes "the day was gloomy" with the antonym gloomy replacing sunny.
That changes the whole mood of the sentence. You can also play synonym and antonym charades.
Act out a word and have your partner guess its synonym or antonym.
This is a great way to practice vocabulary in a social setting.
There are even online games and quizzes that test your knowledge of synonyms and antonyms.
So make it fun. The more you enjoy learning, the more likely you are to stick with it.
So, we've explored some fun ways to learn synonyms and antonym, and now we're moving on to another powerful tool: context clues.
These are hints hidden within a sentence or paragraph that help you figure out the meaning of an unfamiliar word.
It's like detective work. You use the surrounding information to crack the code of the unknown word.
There are different types of context clues. For example, sometimes the author might use synonym clues.
They provide a word with a similar meaning to the unknown word.
For example, the sentence "the house was dilapidated," a crumbling reminder of its former glory, uses crumbling as a synonym clue for dilapidated.
That makes perfect sense. Another type of context clue is the antonym clue. This uses a word with the opposite meaning to give you a hint.
For example, the child felt timid approaching the large dog, while her brother was bold and unafraid.
Exactly. Sometimes the author might use an example to illustrate the meaning of the unknown word.
For example, the chef used a variety of exotic spices in his dish, like saffron and cardamom.
Now that sounds delicious. Finally, you might find clues in the overall tone or topic of the passage.
For example, if you're reading a horror story and encounter the word ominous, the spooky atmosphere can help you guess it means something bad or threatening.
So next time you come across an unfamiliar word, don't panic. Look for context clues to unlock its meaning.
Developing this skill will make you a more confident and independent reader.
Now we're joined by Alex, a reading enthusiast who swears by the power of context clues. Alex, welcome to the show.
Hi, Sophie. Hi, Alan. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to have you, Alex. You mentioned being a big fan of context clues. Can you tell our listeners why they're so helpful?
Absolutely. They're like tiny signposts hidden within the text.
That's a great metaphor, Alex.
Thanks. They point you in the right direction to understand the meaning of an unfamiliar word.
So, you're basically becoming a detective while you read.
Exactly. It's a fun challenge to decipher the clues and unlock the meaning.
And it makes you a more active reader, right?
Yes, definitely. You're not just passively consuming the text, you're actively engaging with it.
So, Alex, any tips for our listeners on how to become better at using context clues?
Sure. First, slow down your reading pace when you encounter an unfamiliar word.
That way, you can pay closer attention to the surrounding sentences.
Exactly. Then, look for synonym clues, antonym clues, or any examples that might be provided.
Remember, the author is leaving you hints.
Finally, consider the overall tone and topic of the passage. Does it give you any clues about the unknown word's meaning?
So basically, become a context clue detective.
Yeah. The more you practice, the easier it becomes to crack the code.
Thanks so much for sharing your insights, Alex.
It was a pleasure having you, Alex. Remember, everyone, vocabulary, it's all about continuous learning and using the tools available to you.
And context clues are powerful tools for unlocking the meaning of new words.
This has been another episode of Fluent English with Podcast. We hope you enjoyed learning about vocabulary building and using context clues.
Join us next time for more tips and tricks to improve your English communication skills.